So there's a little bit of controversy in the native plant community about fertilizing our plants. When you go to the garden center, it is full of fertilizer. And there's all different kinds of fertilizer for different kinds of plants. You've got rose fertilizer, holly tone, bulb fertilizer for tulips and daffodils. There's like the little spikes. Like, what are you supposed to do with native plants? Now, my stance with native plants has always been that they don't need fertilizer. This is like bouncing around here. These plants survived for a long time without us fertilizing them. So they really don't need fertilizer in the garden. Not only do native plants not need fertilizer, but sometimes it can have some unpredictable results. When we plant native prairie plants in our front yard, which is where I recommend that you plant them, in the front yard, don't hide them in the backyard. Root for the home team, be proud of your native plants, put them in the front yard. They are used to growing in pretty harsh conditions, out in the open, under the blasting sun all day, with thousands of other plants around them, not just competing for sun, but competing for root space, nutrients in the soil. So these plants have evolved to tolerate these harsh conditions. Then when we put them in our nice soil in our front yard, maybe we add compost and we put fertilizer around them. Oh yeah, and then we also give them lots of space. These plants are like ready to go, and they take all those nutrients and all that fertilizer and all the water that you're giving them, and they get huge. They just overgrow. They get too tall, they sprawl out, and they just kind of splay open and just like lay down on the ground and just enjoy all of the space and all of the nutrients that they get. I'm sure that the plant really enjoys this, but as a homeowner, I just kind of don't want my plant doing one of these things. So that's why I don't recommend fertilizer for our native plants. But then I came across this Reddit thread where somebody admitted to fertilizing their plants. And then a lot of people in the comments started saying, well, actually, I fertilize my plants too. So we're coming out and saying we're fertilizing. What does this mean that you should do? Okay, this says, dirty secret, I use fertilizer. They go on to say that they wouldn't recommend this for everybody, but they are something of a self-taught horticulturalist, and they grow native plants at home to kind of display the plants for the neighbors to let everybody know what the plants look like. This is exactly what I want to do. They say that they really want everyone to see what the plants look like. They want them to see the plants at their best so that they can promote having native plants. Some people have said that the soil that they have is really poor quality, and then so they use fertilizer to kind of help the native plants. Let's talk about this. So I'm gonna stand by my stance that native plants do not need compost, fertilizer, and once established, they usually don't need supplemental water. What does it mean to be established? An established plant is a plant that's been in the ground for a full season. So that means a full growing season. So if you plant something in the fall and now it's spring, it hasn't been through a full growing season. It doesn't really have all of its roots in the ground. So an established plant has basically been in the ground for about a year. When your plant is established, it has a ton of roots that are in the ground. It's already integrated with the soil, and it's probably gonna do just fine if it's in the right place. I would not fertilize native plants that are established in the garden. It just can tend to make them overgrow. It can push out a lot of foliage that sometimes the stem can't handle, and it makes it floppy, or it might outcompete other plants. Also, you just don't wanna have to keep this up all the time. It's kind of a pain to fertilize, and so I just recommend not doing it. There is a chance that you could have a problem when you're mixing it and you could over fertilize them and kill them. Like, I just think that they need to be left alone once they're established. I also wouldn't fertilize gallon-sized plants that you just planted. So when we buy native plants, they usually come in about 2 sizes, unless it's like a shrub or a big grass or something. They come in gallon sizes and pint sizes. Gallon sizes means that the plant is at least a year old. So it's pretty big already, and it's probably gonna flower the first year. That's the reason that we buy gallon sizes, because we want our flowers sooner. The pint sizes, also known as plugs, those are a little bit smaller, they take longer to grow. So I wouldn't put a gallon-sized native plant in the ground and then fertilize it. I think that that risks the plant overgrowing the foliage and flopping open or just laying down on the ground. It might give you lots of flowers, but the flowers are gonna be laying across the sidewalk. So those are the situations in which I would not fertilize native plants, when they're an established plant in the ground or when you're buying a larger size like a gallon. Now, are there times that I have fertilized my native plants? Yes. The times I've done that is usually when they're seedlings growing in like a soilless medium like Pro Mix, something where the soil that I'm growing them in for a short period of time really doesn't have any nutrients in it, and I'm not ready to plant them in the ground yet. When they're growing in peat moss or coco coir, those mixes just really don't have any nutrients in them. It's just kind of a medium for the seed to become a seedling. After that, they will kind of stop growing a little bit unless I add fertilizer. So that's when I'm growing things from seed in a controlled environment, like under lights or in small batches. Some people have recommended that you dilute the fertilizer so that you're not giving them the full strength because they're just seedlings. I don't do that. I just follow whatever the manufacturer's instructions are for the fertilizer, and then I just give them that maybe once a week or something like that. It's for a short period of time when they're growing in pots before I'm putting them in the ground. Another time that I've fertilized my native plants is when they're plugs or pints, very small plants, and it's kind of a slow growing plant. This is like a plug of grass like Spirobolus, or a plug of maybe a sedge, and they're looking pretty small. Sedges grow low to the ground, they're kind of small, and if I fertilize them, I'm going to have them push out some more foliage and they're going to grow a little bit faster. These are things that I don't have to worry about flopping. So basically the lesson that I'm saying here is that I fertilize small plants that aren't going to get big and flop over. Usually they're young plants, they're in plugs or pints, and they're a type of plant that I know the growth habit. I know this isn't gonna get really tall and flop over. I know that it isn't gonna be a huge plant. This is a small plant that I just wanna help along a little bit for the first year. Plants that I definitely would not fertilize is anything with like a tall stalk, anything that's 4 feet tall or taller. Plants that will want to lay down is like purple coneflower. God forbid you fertilize Joe Pieweed, you're gonna have a real problem. That's a tall one. There's lots of tall prairie plants. I would not touch them with fertilizer at all. Sometimes the information that we get from the internet is just a little bit wonky, and people are doing all different kinds of things to try to see what works for them in their yard. So I maintain that our native plants don't need any fertilizer when they're established or when they're a large plant. You can fertilize them when they're small, when they're young, but you absolutely don't have to. One thing that you might not be able to skip though is giving them supplemental water when they're young. So plugs and pints, small plants that you plant outside in the ground, are gonna probably need supplemental water for about a month, maybe 6 weeks, depending on, if you've got a drought going on. Right now, I'm in the Chicago area and we are dry. It's been raining for a few days, but I dug down into the ground and the soil is really dry, just about an inch below the surface. So we're gonna need several more weeks of rain in order to make that up. Really get in there and take a look at your soil. Don't just say, well, oh, the ground is wet, it looks like it's been raining. Dig in there a little bit and see how wet the ground is, and you might find out that you do need to have some supplemental water when you plant your plugs and pints now. Thanks for watching, and join my Patreon if you'd like to have some more free videos where we dive deeper on native plants. The link is in the description. Bye for now.